Good afternoon. Welcome to all of you who are following us live online to this fourth Q&A question and answer session we're organizing in relation to our first open calls for project proposals. This time we are focusing on small scale projects. My name is Thomas Fleury. I'm head of the Joint Secretariat of the Interalpine Space Program. I'm extremely pleased to welcome you all to this 1.5 hour session, and I will guide you through it. The session's objective, I may recall in a second, in a nutshell. So the small scale project is a novelty in this new programming period. We heard the expectations from our stakeholders, from you, when planning the program for the period 21-27. And the idea was to open the door to a new type of smaller project compared to the typical 3 years project we have had so far. And we heard this was voiced quite strongly. The idea is to have a shorter, lighter, easier to manage project that focus on the specific types of activities that have specific ambitions, and to open up also to new target groups. I will show you the way the session will be structured today. So next slide, please. We have a structure in 3 parts, each of them being followed by a Q&A moment. Nuno Madeira will be first setting the scene, if I may say, reminding the ambition and cornerstone of small-scale projects. Then we are pleased to have today 2 experts that will give some flesh to the bone to illustrate the ambition in 2 fields in particular, circular economy and resilience adaptation to climate change. I will introduce both experts later on. And then Nuno, there will be a question round after this, the 2 experts inputs. And then Nuno will also introduce some more technical, practical information and next steps. Here again, there will be the possibility to pose some questions, and then we'll come to a closure, to a farewell of the session. To interact with you, we will be using the Slido tool, which will be introduced to you now. My colleague Elisa Kerschbaumer, Project Officer at the Joint Secretariat, will manage this part and the relation with you, basically. So floor is you. Floor is yours, Elisa.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you for the introduction, and hello, everybody, from what is now becoming our Slido living room, since we are having so many sessions in this month. So as usual, for those of you who followed the previous sessions, you can pose your question in Slido. So you can simply digit slido.com in the browser. The hashtag for today is ASP small scale. And by doing so, you will be ready to pose the questions you might have. We already have received some, and we hope that we will get more, and more will come during the presentations. Just to warm you up a little bit, as usual, we have prepared 3 starting questions just to see a bit who is following us. And so in the meantime, while I wait you all to come on Slido, I launched the first question, which is a very simple one. So we would like to know under which priority you are currently planning to submit 1 or more application for a small scale project. So we are talking about, of course, the first goal, which is currently open. So either priority 1, 2, or 3. And I just wait a little bit because I assume that some of you are still joining Slido in the meantime, because I see that there are not many people connected so far. So let's wait just a little bit longer and see what are your feedbacks, because we already asked you when signing up for the event today if you were planning or not to submit an application, but we would like to have a broad idea of on which priority you are concentrating more. And at the moment, I see that priority 1, it's the most voted one, but also the other 2 are fairly enough addressed. So not to lose too much time, we can go to the second question. I see in the meantime some other people are joining in. So let's go to our second question, which is, as you know, for small-scale projects, we can have 2 different typologies of projects, basically. One can be a set the scene, and another one can be a more focused on capitalization. Which one of the 2 at the moment you are currently exploring? So either one, set the scene, capitalization, or both of them in case you are working on more than one proposal. And this is also interesting to see also where maybe you already find more potential or more interest. And I see that voting are increasing, but set the scene seems to be the most voted one. Quite interesting to know. And we will then see, of course, like during the session, looking at your question, if this comes from the fact that set the scene is more clear to you, or it's simply because you have the feeling it has more potential. But yeah, it's a good overview to have at the moment. So we can close also this question, and we can go now to the final one. And here we would like to know, if any, because it doesn't mean that there should be some for you, but what are the main challenges that you're facing in the development of a small-scale project idea? So you have more problems understanding which kind of outputs and results are expected, defining the right partnership, so regarding number of PPs, the type, the origin of them, and so on, or understand how much actual room for experimentation is given. And here, let's wait still a little bit to see if some other inputs are coming. I see that at the moment it's quite high, the vote for understanding which kind of outputs and results are expected. And if I may, I just steal 2 minutes regarding the second point, so defining the right partnership. We observe that there may be a little, I see that it's now increasing quite a lot, that one. We realize that there has been probably some misunderstanding regarding the fact that now we are not really talking about only small scale, but this applies also to classic. The fact that there is no VP for management anymore. This does not mean at all that no budget is foreseen for management. The point is only that you don't have a VP standing alone anymore, but the budget for project management activities are embedded into the thematical VP. But so the role of the management part of the activities, and especially the role of the lead partner, is recognized by the program, and of course budget will be available for that. And at the same time, one thing that I guess maybe today we can still address, and again, it regards both small and classic projects, small scale and classic project, it's the fact that we really, with this new programming period, have big simplifications, especially regarding the budget part. So we really expect that now the role of the lead partner should be easier to deal with. And so, like, don't be too scared about taking on the leading role, because there is, as I said, first, the budget foreseen for that, even though we don't have a specific VP, and we have set up tools which should allow you to do this role in a smoother way. So I can close also this poll, but it's interesting to see the votes that you gave. It's a good feedback for us. And with this, I think I can give back the word to Nuno for his presentation, or to Thomas, if he's introducing again, and then we'll see each other here again after the presentation for your questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Elisa, for this introduction, this warming up round. Thanks to all participants who have answered these few questions so that we know a bit more, know you a bit better, and also the first ideas on things that require some clarifications. We will now, I would say, without a too long transition, move directly to the presentation of main cornerstones to basically essential reminder which are the essentials, the cornerstones for these small scale projects, basing on what is actually indicated in our program document, in our program manual, and also in the specific terms of reference for small scale projects. So I will pass the word now directly to Nuno Madeira, who will give you some insights on these elements. Right, Nuno, floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Elisa, as well. Indeed, I will, as the title suggests, I will give you a bit more information about the small-scale projects, from the cornerstones to the typologies that we will co-finance. Push on to the next slide, please. As a reminder, I would like to share with you how the program is structured. I guess that most of you, if not all by now, are familiar with our Interact program for 21-27 period. As you can see on the screen, the program is structured around 4 priorities and 7 specific objectives. The call for small-scale projects is open to priorities 1, 2, and 3, which means that all potential applicants are invited to submit proposals across the specific objectives covered by these 3 priorities, from climate resilience to carbon neutrality. Next slide, please. Now, if we focus on small-scale projects and the reason why we introduced this typology in the new program, well, some of the arguments have been already said in the introduction by both Thomas and Elisa. In the public consultations that we launched during the programming process, we noticed that there was a demand from our stakeholders and the general public as well, if you will, to introduce this typology to better respond to the objectives of the program, and at the same time to react, let's say, to unexpected or emerging trends in the program area. So in this regard, we developed the small-scale projects, which are shorter in time involved or required involvement of less partners compared to the classic projects. And here potential applicants have the possibility to address topics from a thematic and a territorial perspective, and to deliver knowledge through analysis or field work. We basically give priority to, let's say, to 2 strands. The first strand is the set the scene projects, which are rather new to transnational cooperation. So what does it mean by set the scene projects? Well, here we want to open up to new perspectives for cooperation, and the development of project proposals within our program or other funding schemes. The second strand, if you will, are the capitalization actions. And here the purpose of these actions is to bring and roll out available tools and solutions developed in other contexts. But for some reason, these tools and solutions still require additional funding to boost implementation on the ground. And therefore, this sort of measure aims at promoting the uptake of project achievements among the target groups on fields of cooperation where the body of knowledge and the results are already available and tested by stakeholders. So now the point is to bring the implementation to the ground. Next slide, please. Now, as I said initially, the focus is on these two strands, the set the scene projects and the capitalization actions. As I said initially, projects are shorter in time, meaning that projects will run from 12 to 18 months, and the partnership is also shorter, meaning that we expect to see partnerships of 3 to 6 partners from at least 3 countries. So, for instance, if your partnership brings together partners from Carinthia, Bolzano, and Freiburg, this is totally fine from the program perspective. Of course, you still have to pay attention to the transnational character of your proposal, which will be, of course, subject to assessment. Equally important is the fact that the lead partner needs to be a public body or a body governed by public law. And finally, the budgets, which ranges or could range between 250,000 and 750,000. Please bear in mind that we're talking about the total budget. So, and the ERDF co-financing in the 21-27 period would be at 75%. So keep these figures in mind when calculating the ERDF contribution. Next slide, please. Now I would like to give you some few examples that could be helpful for you in the development of your proposals to either set the scene or capitalization actions. I think it's fairly acceptable to say that the program is committed to reduce territorial disparities. This is at the heart of the cohesion policy and therefore also at the heart of European territorial cooperation programs. When it comes to digitalization, which is one of the core topics covered by our program, we still see a gap between urban and rural areas, which is a concern for SMEs' growth potential, let's say. Recently, the 8th cohesion report says that IT infrastructure investments alone do not automatically lead to higher growth rates. You know, these investments could or should be accompanied by policies that create a favorable environment for companies and their employees who otherwise find little opportunities to access to training or remote work. So to this end, I think we believe that small-scale projects could open up new avenues for cooperation in an effort to bridge the gap between SMEs in urban or rural areas. Another option is to look at the results delivered by, for instance, RPAF projects. RPAF is the preparatory action created on the initiative of the European Parliament to support the USALP action groups in the implementation of their work plans. So the RPAF projects have delivered a body of knowledge end results that or that could help design public policies. An option here within our program is to facilitate, for instance, the implementation and monitoring of governance models. Let's say in the field of forest management, which was one of the topics covered by the ARPA funding scheme in the past. And why the forest management? Still, biodiversity and forest management is a core topic addressed by our program as well. And we know that forest management has to cope with a number of social demands and environmental strands, which are pushing the industry, the timber and forest industry, to the let's say to the very edge of profitability. So here again, there's an option that could be implemented through small-scale projects, and therefore results and the knowledge delivered in another context could be taken a step further through a capitalization action. So you see, as you can see, there are reasons to believe, or solid reasons to believe, that small-scale projects could help us respond better to the objectives of the program in the next programming period. Thank you.
Thank you, Nuno, indeed, for recalling the frame, for telling us more about the cornerstones. I think it's now time to have a look and turn to Elisa. Maybe, Elisa, you can let us know if something is moving there in Slido, if there are some questions related to Nuno's input that we could try to give answers to.
Yes, sure. I see that there are like two most voted questions, which were about what kind of achievements expected due to the short project period and what kind of outputs the program expects to be delivered. I hope that with Nuno's presentation now it was a bit clarified, because this question came before actually the presentation. But if, Nuno, you want to add something more, of course, just let me know if you have any additional input that you can provide on that. Otherwise, I can move on to other questions.
Well, I mean, in relation to the outputs, I will refer to them in the next presentation. After the two interventions that we have scheduled, I will speak a little bit more about the project structure, and here I could address the outputs that we expect to be delivered. So I take note of this question for the next session, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. And the same applies. And the same applies to the achievements. Well, in expected due to the short period of time for implementation. Well, I mean, I think that we have to put into context the achievements. I think that indeed the period is shorter compared to a classic project, but I think that we can still deliver concrete results in 12 or 18 months. But again, I will talk a little bit more about the achievements in the next presentation.
Thank you, Nuno. And then maybe, since we don't have a lot of time, I would take one question which seems to be quite important and for the participants, which is about observers, or is it advised to have observers in a small-scale project, and how many at maximum?
Well, I wouldn't try to quantify the number of observers that we expect from your side. I think that you have to consider what is really important to bring on board, or who is important to bring on board according to his her experience or expertise in the field. Please also keep in mind that observers are not subject to assessments, which is which wasn't, let's say, the case in the previous program. In the 21-27 period, observers are welcome, but these are not subject to assessment. So again, it's not really the question is not so much about the quantity or the minimum number of observers that you would like to bring on board. It's more the expertise that you require to, let's say, to provides input and to make sure that you're on the right track.
Thank you, Nuno. And just quickly, one question, if you can reply in a rather quick way. Sorry, I took the wrong one. And it's, can partners be also companies?
Can partners? Yes. But they cannot be lead partners. As I said in my intervention, the lead partner needs to be a public body or a body governed under public law. Otherwise, companies can take part as project partners.
Thank you, Nuno, for confirming. And with this, then I give back the word to Thomas, and then we can continue reading some questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Thanks also, Nuno, for your first questions here. Indeed, there's more technical questions, but let's wait indeed that you made your presentation on that towards the in the third part of the session. Right, so we will now move on to the next to the second part, let's say, of our session today, and we are honored and delighted actually to have two experts with us today. We'll share their views on some key challenges, global challenges, but also challenges that are hitting the Alpine region, and they will underline also some opportunities that these challenges represent for cooperation in the area. And we'll try, I think, to break them down maybe to the new type of project that we have in mind and that we're presenting today. So the first expert is Mrs. Eser. She's a German circular design consultant, lecturer for circular design at the University of Salzburg. She created a company called Sinnenwandel that accompanies innovation teams and offers also seminars for capacity building for sustainable development, sustainability. Mrs. Eser also works as expert for definition of international ISO standards for circular economy. So I think, Mrs. Eser, you will tell us more about the holistic approach to circular economy, present also some projects working on systemic solutions, and maybe tell us a bit what you think from your perspective could be ideas fields where small scale projects in the Alpine area could be implemented. But yeah, floor is yours. Very welcome to this session today. And yeah, I kindly remind you, of course, that we have 15 minutes for your presentation, but I'm sure that will work, no problem. Thank you, Mrs. Eser.
Yes, good afternoon from Bavaria to all. Thank you for the nice introduction. And my presentation is about change by disaster or by design. And as already said, we will look into what are actions that bring circular economy into life in the Alpine space. So just to start about, humanity undertakes a lot of interesting experiments at the moment. So one is, what do we do without certain raw materials? And in fact, only 8.6% of materials were recycled and reinserted into the economy as secondary raw material in 2021. Another experiment is, how many toxins can we tolerate at the same time, as everyday items are designed with toxins still. Then we are looking if we need other species and what are they good for, as we have at the moment up to 1 million animal and plant species that are threatened with extinction, which is a mass extinction like we have seen at the time of the dinosaurs. And we look for how many life supporting systems do we need. And you may know this graphic from the Stockholm Resilience Center, and we are already out of safe operating space for humanity in 6 sectors. Here in green, you see the safe operating space. And of course, we have exceeded it for climate change, but also biosphere integrity, land system change, biogeochemical flows like nitrogen and phosphate, and novel entities. So the potential of half of the ecosystems to deliver ecosystem services has decreased already today. And about 54% of the demand for the so-called regulating ecosystem services is insecure, like climate, water, and disease regulation, which needs so dearly in the alpine space, as well as pollination, of course. And the question is, how hot do we like it? You see here the wildfires in 2021, and with a really remarkable persistent and intensity. So we have multiple crises in the Anthropocene, and all started at about 1950 with the increase in the world population, with the exponential increase in world population. And in fact, also awareness is increasing with all these Friday for Future strikes, etc. And they are asking for a system change. And a study recently published says that 56% of the young people all over the world think that humanity is doomed. You can see here young children play on a melting ice in Alaska. So multiple crises need a systemic solution. We cannot just make a little bit more of what we already have done. And the first step is a change in mindset. And instead of looking for economy, society, and ecosystem as equal, you see here a new integrative model of sustainable development, where you see that economy is embedded within the society, and both are embedded in the global ecosystems as a basis for life. And still, economy, of course, says it must pay off. And society now says, looking for Fridays for Future, for example, there must be rules. And we've seen that the global ecosystems already give us limits, and we must try to live and produce within these limits. And the systemic solution for these multiple crises is the regenerative circular economy of the European Union. So it's intended to make a significant contribution to decouple value creation and human well-being from the resource consumption, which is the main issue for all these crises we see. And it seeks a holistic solution to the various interconnected crises like climate change, resource overuse, biodiversity loss, and declining of global health. And it aims to shape the economic system in a way that it is compatible with nature and ecosystems. So the principles of the circular economy are very simple. It's designing out waste and pollution, it's keeping products and materials in use, and its regeneration of natural system, and all these is packed into the small scale projects already. So the circular economy is part of the sustainable development, and it can make a contribution to a lot of the SDGs, and especially the number 12 is this SDG, responsible consumption and production, which we hope the circular economy makes a big contribution to. So one of the linear risks, of course, is use of scarce and unsustainable resources. Like you can see here, there are no satellites without gallium in the future. So a solution of the circular economy is the circulation of products and materials in continuous biological and technical cycles. For example, also to reuse
Seems we're having a technical connection issue here. Is it confirmed by the technical staff behind? If so, we'll try if we can re-establish the connection with Mrs. Eser. We're just making a live check with Mrs. Eser, so thank you very much to all our participants. Mrs. Eser, are you back with us?
Yeah, I hope.
Okay.
Yes, you can see me again.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, sorry for that. I think it was a short interruption in internet as we have a storm here, I think due to climate change. Actually, I cannot share my presentation right now.
But I think
maybe
we can take over here. So I'll
all
ask
right, that would be good.
colleagues to jump in. It was a very short interruption, so no issues.
I'm very sorry.
you cannot do anything against the storms, I guess.
Yeah, you know, the technical problems with all this. Okay.
Right. So do I get a green light for the slides? Yes, I think we can go on.
Okay. Thank you. So I stop with the circulation and the reuse of components. For example, like here you see take components from an already existing building when you are deconstructing and try to build something new of it. Or the next slide, please. Or, of course, the reuse of byproducts from the food system. We can use inedible food byproducts and make it into new ingredients. As an example, I bring in here the substitution of sugar, which is usually made from sugar beet, sugar cane, and corn, from byproducts such as fruit juice pulp, cacao, fruit pulp, or coffee cherries and crop residues. Next slide, please. And then, of course, we can reuse all other stuff like clothing, for example. And COA Scotland, a circular hotspot, has developed a certification scheme and developed a quality standard for secondhand stores to make it easier for the user. Next slide, please. And then we, of course, need to use all existing material and energy. So as you can see here for hotels, to make water cycles and use the recycled water for irrigate gardens and flushing the toilets, or also generate energy from food waste and organic materials, with, for example, in a pyrolysis plant to produce natural gas and biochar. Next slide, please. Then we have the linear risk to use the use of toxic materials. Next slide. What can we do with this and take action? Of course, we can design out pollution, which means we look at the products we are making and look at all dangerous and risky substances in products and also processes right from the product development state. Next slide, please. And the European Union already made a significant contribution to a pollution-free environment with this Zero Pollution Action Plan and the chemical strategies, with the objective to prevent and eliminate pollution of air, water, soil, and ban the most harmful chemicals in consumer products. And of course, we have seen that circulating everyday things, including harmful chemicals, will mean that we also recycle the toxic content and enrich it in the cycles. And we don't want to do that. Next slide, please. Then, of course, we have the linear risk of waste and pollution. You can see on this big graphic here that only 2% of plastic is returned to the cycle and over 32% are lost to the environment, which is a really big amount of material we cannot use and reuse. Next slide. And this is what it looks like in the ocean there, of course, waste all over the place. Next slide, please. And what should we do? It's necessary to design out waste. For example, in tires, which we cannot recycle properly. Next slide. And that will mean that we really reinvent the wheel if this is necessary, that we then get products which can be recycled properly with all the materials we use. Next slide. For construction, it's also very important as construction waste accounts for 50% of European waste. And here again, COA Scotland has a good idea. They are supporting construction industry with a resource library. They build guidelines for circular design and they provide training for circular construction. Next slide. And it's also important to build up sustainable circular product systems, because without a circular system, a product will not get back into the cycle. So we cannot have a sustainable product without bringing it back into the cycle. So this means I've brought here the example of Desso, a carpet producer from the Netherlands, that you redesign your product without hazardous substances and for recycling, that you adjust your production, then you develop a system that you can take back your product, like here, a spray glue system that you can take out single tiles to be replaced. Then that you develop a maintenance and cleaning as a service or leasing, which make it easier to recover your old product. And then you set up a return logistic yourself or with partners to collect here tile layer so that they can return and then be recycled properly. Next slide, please. And of course, the European Union has also brought up a solution, the ban of single-use plastics. You know the objective of this strategy, to prevent plastic from getting into our water, our food, and even our bodies, as Franz Timmermann has said. Next slide. And then we have a big linear risk, which is a really old idea. It's planned obsolescence, and you can see here on the right side, it's from 1932 already, the idea. And we see that from the desired lifetime in orange, we see that the actual lifetime in blue is much below, and we need, of course, for increasing the lifetime again with good solutions. Next slide, please. So a circular economy solution is the product life extension with circular design, which means to make products for long life and facilitate repair, reuse, the upgrading, as you can see here on the right with the Fairphone example, and make it easy for remanufacturing, easy disassembly at the end of use cycle. Next slide. And of course, we have from the European Union already the Circular Economy Action Plan with the objective to making sustainable products and circular products the norm. Next slide. So another linear risk is that profit depends on new product sales, which means the typical linear business models are sales-oriented, make higher profit with higher sales. So the motto is selling products, the more the better. Next slide. And we need to do something against this with the new business models, like you can see here, the Schiphol Airport, with all the light, which they have a contract, pay-per-looks contract with Philips, and they buy in light as a service, including services and warranties. All lighting fixtures are the properties of Philips until the end of the service life. So the airport has nothing to do with it. And this allows the production of long-lasting products without disadvantages for Philips, and a lot of advantages for the airport and the environment, of course. Next slide, please. Then we have this linear risk greenhouse gas emission, which lead to climate change. We will hear shortly about this in more detail. So it's also depending on the extraction, refinement, and management of natural resources, which currently cause about 50% of greenhouse gas emissions, especially from biomass extraction. Next slide, please. And we need to do something about this, which means that we look for circular sourcing, which saves greenhouse gas emissions. That means that we circulate material and that we use secondary material as input for new products and processes, that we use carbon dioxide as a resource itself, that we use renewable energy for production and transportation, that we use biomass only from regenerative sources, or at least sustainable sources, because non-sustainable managed bio-based resources are classified as non-renewable because they are generally overexploited and managed in a way that produces high emissions. Next slide. And another circular solution is the high quality recycling, which saves a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. If material, here you see the example of steel, were not downgraded through blending, this would make an important contribution to global climate targets. So we need the recycling of high quality materials. You see the numbers, it could result in a lot of savings of carbon dioxide, and we're losing nearly all the material at the moment if we mix them. So we need proper sorting and collection and recycling processes all over the open space. Next slide, please. Then we have the linear risk of species extinction. I said it before, we lose species, and this changes ecosystem structure and functioning, and results in the loss of ecosystem services such as regulation against flooding and pests or diseases. And in fact, between 1940 and 2004, over 300 new diseases emerged worldwide, and half of these can be directly traced to changes in land use and farming practices, hunting of wildlife, and large-scale deforestation. And by destroying natural habitat and increasing context to wildlife, we are opening up the pathways for viruses to reach the human body and adapt. And you see the coronavirus here. In fact, nature destruction is a crisis behind the corona crisis, and it will not be the last pandemic we will see. Next slide, please. So what we do with circular economy, we are also making a systemic contribution to regenerate natural system. You can see on the right, with eliminating waste and pollution, we reduce the threats to biodiversity. With circulating products and materials, we leave room for biodiversity, and with regenerating nature, we enable biodiversity to thrive. And we have understood that health of people is linked to the health of the environment. So we really need these regenerative management practices that have positive impacts on nature and help regenerate degraded ecosystem. Next slide, please. Just a short example to integrate the need of animal species in the planning so that they can live with us. There's a very interesting project called Animal Aided Design, where you can really take up the planning with the species needs. Next slide, please. And a very important structure are the circular hotspots. You can see they are evolving all over the planet, especially a lot in the European Union. And the creation of circular hotspots are important as incubators, as supporters, as networkers to accelerate the transition to a circular economy on the regional and local level. Next slide. And of course, they are supporting actions like public circular procurement. 90% of GDP is the number here, what can be a really supporting activity. Next slide. Then, of course, there's need for market for secondary materials. Next slide. Then we need to build up industrial symbiosis where the byproducts of one company is used by another company, which makes a very resilient structure all over the place. Next slide, please. And what we really need to do is to create conditions that are conducive to life. As we know that life has survived 3.8 billion years so far, and success for other living beings means the continuous life. And the basic rule for life is that all living beings create life-supporting conditions, and for all other species. And we just need to remember that with what we are doing, that we can leave life behind instead of death, what we are doing right now at the moment. I hope I could show you that we really have a lot of problems, but we have a lot of solutions by the hand if you make it in a systemic approach. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Eser, for your input. Despite the technical little break that we've had, it worked all fine in the end. Thanks for taking us on this journey. Indeed, many ideas here, concrete ideas on how these challenges could be tackled at global scale, but also some ideas for the Alpine level. I think if it's fine, we will not take questions right now. We'll first have the input from Mr. Lexer. And get back then to both of you in case there's questions on Slido. And here I'm inviting also the participants to take the chance to pose the one or the other question, maybe to our experts that we're having here today. Right, so you can of course use Slido for that. So thank you very much again. I will now introduce our next speaker, our next expert, Mr. Lexer, working in the field, in a field also where there's a number of challenges which were partly illustrated before at global scale, but that has a particular relevance for the Alpine space: climate change, the resilience and adaptation to climate change. As we all know, the Alpine region is affected. The effects on climate change and impacts are quite significant and rather hard in different ways hitting the Alps. Mr. Lexer is leads an expert team on climate change and environment impact assessment at the Austrian Environment Agency. He's also a member of the USALP, EU strategy, macro-regional strategy for the Alps, for the action group number 8 on risk governance, and how to better manage climate change and related risks. He's part of the experts involved in the Alpine Climate Board of the Alpine Convention, and I think Mr. Lexer, you were also involved in a number of Alpine Space projects as lead partner, as project partner over the past 15 years, and in particular in capitalization projects, if I recall right. So Mr. Lexer will share some thoughts with us to illustrate with some examples, according to him, where basically he sees potential for rolling out the body of knowledge that is available in that field, possibly through small-scale projects in the Alpine area. So Mr. Lexer, the floor is yours, and yeah, we're very much looking forward to your insights.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I hope everyone can hear me. Good afternoon, also from my side. Yes, as Mr. Fleury has already said, I'm going to focus on the second strand or application purpose of these new kind of small-scale projects, which we may nickname capitalization or rollout. And as I happen to being an expert in for climate adaptation, I'm going to use the field of adaptation and of disaster risk reduction as a thematic example. I will take the freedom to try to illustrate what rollout could possibly mean by using concrete examples from my own field of work, taking also advantage of my membership in the USALP AG8 in the ACP, and drawing on some of my own experiences as a lead partner of previous Alpine Space projects. So please note, these are just really illustrative, purely indicative examples, meant by no means to be prescriptive. The purpose is just to try to make things a bit more concrete, to exemplify, to demonstrate what it could mean. The picture you see is a humorous take on the project life cycle of your typical classical Interreg project. As many of you may know it, you start out with an enthusiastic kickoff, large ambitions, big voluminous work plans, which sends everyone to the floor laughing and then maybe falling asleep for the next couple of reporting periods. And then in the last months, everything becomes very stressy because the partners are working hard, completing their outputs, producing, they're finalizing the products. And usually we succeed, celebrate our joint achievements. Next one, please. And almost all of our projects have produced good results, have partly produced excellent and outstanding products, outputs like tools, like new methods, prototypes of solutions, strategic recommendations. But just because we have been so busy producing these outputs in the last months and doing the final reporting and the final accounting and maybe the first level and second level control, well, what about the actual use of these projects? I must admit, in my own projects, we did not always succeed in reaching all the target groups we had in mind, in disseminating, in putting these outputs into effect to achieve what we all would like to see, what the program wants to see, results in terms of changes in the real world, so to say. Next, please. Which means if you don't succeed totally, your excellent outputs might fall into that big and infamous divide. In C3 Alps, we called it the knowledge producer user divide that separates you as the project partnership from your intended target groups and users. Next one, please. Talking about rollout or capitalization, what notions or what buzzwords, what connotations does it carry? One thinks of transfer, of diffusion, of uptake, upscaling, follow-ups, and so on. In the end, what you want to achieve is implementation, application of your products on a wider scale. In short, you want to put your outputs into effect, into a practice, to bridge the gap from knowledge to actual use, to achieve results in the sense of changes in the real world, impacts, outcomes. Next one. So when I prepared this presentation, you can go on, please. Yeah, thank you. Try to think of what could a possible pathways of rolling out previous outputs of previous projects, be it tools, be it policy recommendations. What could it entail? What could it require? I think one important concept here is the usability, the transferability of your outputs, taking a second look at it, a fresh look, optimizing usability and usefulness. And of course, you have to closely consider the needs of your target groups in that case. I think this new kind of project also offers a real big chance to reach out to new target groups beyond the bubble, so to say, for example, beyond the more narrow community of climate adaptation experts, also to involve new kinds of partners. When we think of or talk of transfer, which is a term we regularly use in these kind of transnational projects, but I think we're all aware it's not a self-runner. It's not a fast-selling item. Transfer isn't a trivial task. You always have to concretize, customize, adjust your products to specific different contexts, be it geographical context, administrative, legal, language-wise. Also, you have to think of translation to native languages, things like that. To get your products known, you could think of demonstrations, showcasing, marketing, so to say, advertising. And if you want to roll, for example, an existing tool out on a wider scale and in other territories, you probably will need some kind of governance model, some kind of governance structure, someone who coordinates. You will have to allocate responsibilities, someone who takes ownership. You will have to think about how to organize the implementation process, maybe also install learning mechanisms and so on. And you definitely need to interact with your target groups, with the users of your tool, for example. So there's probably ample opportunity to employ dialogue formats, exchange learning formats, to engage into capacity building activities, using existing networks, or if it's a really new topic, think of creating new networks, think like that. And because you want to institutionalize your product, your solution, you first have to think about resources in a sustainable manner, kind of business model to keep the thing running after the project end. And it's always helpful, of course, to achieve political resolutions, written agreements, to see progress in integrating your tool, for example, in existing policy frameworks, maybe also national funding schemes, things like that. Okay, next one. One concrete example. This is an existing tool and the procedure. It's called Natural Hazards and Climate Change Preparedness Check, targeting municipality. It's kind of a voluntary risk preparedness auditing tool and procedure, which in itself already has seen, it's a small transnational transfer success story, I would say, because the idea and the concept has been developed by a national working group in Austria, but it was strongly inspired by the existing model of flood risk audits in Germany, then kind of transferred to Austria and considerably extended to cover all kinds of climate-driven hazards and extreme weather risks. And with the help of USARP AG8 and the AlpGov1 project, it has an operational concept and manual has been developed. Okay, let's go on. It is to some extent it has been rolled out and established in Austria. It's available, it's being applied, but we know from USARP there's interest from other countries and regions. One kind of retransfer back to Bavaria is already in the pipeline, but there are other regions. And what could be done in that regard? Okay, take advantage of the existing application experiences in Austria, evaluating, learning from these experiences, organizing kind of demonstration, exhibition checks in other countries. Of course, you need to test, customize to the specific framework conditions, align the tool, the procedure to existing structures and processes in these other territories. You have to think, as aforementioned, about the governance structure, who steers, who coordinates, who does what, things like that. And applying the tool needs qualified staff. An opportunity maybe to organize first trainings of future risk auditors, or at least to develop a kind of curriculum. And also think about further continue the peer-to-peer learning networks at domestic level, but also at transnational level. Next one.
Quick intervention from my side, Mr. Lexer,
Yeah.
just to recall that I would say if you still have 4 or 5 minutes to
All right.
present
speed
the
up.
inspiring example. Thank you.
The other examples follow a similar pathway, so I guess I can be quicker here. CAPA stands for the Climate Adaptation Platform for the Alps, has been a product of a previous Alpine Space project. It has been kept alive, it's up and running, it's operational, but being the portal manager myself, I know that there are lots of challenges to really further deploy and develop and make use of such a tool. And what could be done in that regard? Next one. Engage in kind of rollout activities to do content enhancement, to deploy it further, addressing sectoral target groups, maybe embedded in a knowledge transfer initiative for mainstreaming adaptation knowledge into sectors. Think about installing cross-portal harvesting features, cooperating with new forthcoming projects, networking with other portal providers, things like that, and also, of course, to invest in visibility, in, let's say, the marketing, in stimulating and maintaining the demand for that kind of knowledge. Next one. Let's jump over this to one back, please. One example for a recommendation, strategic recommendations, is a white paper. A white paper presenting state of the art of the knowledge and policy recommendations for integrated forest fire management in the Alps. Forest fires, emerging growing risk due to climate change. And to take this the next steps further, small scale projects could engage in setting up integrated forest fire management plans in different territories at different territorial levels. There's also a need for a transnational network for knowledge transfer, exchange on forest fires. Regional multi-stakeholder roundtables are very useful in that regard. You could also think of joint trainings of specialized action forces from different countries and regions. And there's also a need to have a transnational database and the monitoring system. Next one, please. One example a prominent example from the Alpine Convention, since 2020, there's a new Alpine Climate Action Plan adopted by the Ministerial Conference. And if you don't know it, basically it consists of a target system in 10 sectors and arrange 30 implementation pathways to achieve these targets. And each of these implementation pathways basically is a sequence of measures, of implementation steps that don't reinvent the wheel, but start all building on previous existing achievements, existing knowledge. And these small-scale projects could be a good opportunity to tackle especially the initial steps of most of these pathways, which are basically small-scale capitalization exercises. Having a look at what's already there, doing a gap analysis, compiling it, and taking it as the basis to go ahead and build also durable partnerships that take ownership for implementing certain pathways. And last slide. These are some examples. Let's go on. Last slide. Yeah, one topic maybe that crosses over from simple in brackets, simple rollout or capitalization more to setting the scene. We acknowledge that adaptation is by now comparatively mature policy field, but still there is need for innovations. And one of these areas is that there is still a low level and the lack of involving the private sector in financing and in implementing adaptation, especially in cities, in municipalities. At the same time, we know that a lack of financing is the most often mentioned barrier to implementing local adaptation. So there's obviously a need to combine public and private funding sources in smart ways. And luckily, the solutions are in principle available. There's a whole portfolio of green or sustainable financing instruments that have partly been tested. There are success stories, there are good practice examples, but there are still niche innovations up to now. So just as an illustration, what these small scale projects maybe could do, take that idea, tackle the issue of how to involve the private sector, how to mobilize also private money for adaptation. And for doing so, you definitely need to involve private sector actors in such projects, banks, businesses, insurances, together with the local authorities. There's maybe a need for new kinds of project participants, finance experts, policy diffusion experts. You certainly would need some effective usable information materials on these innovative financing solutions. It could be an option to set up kind of knowledge alliances or a think tank, an advisory board combining these new types of actors. There's maybe also potential to employ peer-to-peer learning formats, maybe twinning together actors from cities that already have experiences with such innovative financing tools with the ones that don't have organizing on-site visits, excursions, things like that. Thanks a lot. I stop here, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lexer, indeed, for your input to bring a bit of color, bring a bit of content to these to this tool, the small scale projects, and what could really potentially from your experience, from your involvement in in running initiatives, be rolled out, or even where there would be potential for setting the scene in the field of climate change, to bring the knowledge to another level, to mainstream through rollout projects, as you said. And I think that was very, very inspiring. Also, the input by Mrs. Eser. The field is a bit newer to the alpine space and to cooperation in the area. Still, we saw many ideas that high potential there for cooperation projects, not only through small scale projects, but in general in the alpine area. So thank you indeed to both of our speakers, of our experts. Looking at the clock and also asking to Elisa any questions content-wise to our experts. If that would not be the case, I would suggest we move to the next part, more technical one, when Nuno will be introducing us.
Yes, actually, at the moment, we didn't really receive a question for the speakers. So I assume that either it's because they were clear and inspiring enough. I hope it's because of that. If you have any, please make sure that when you type them in Slido, you put before maybe the name of Ms. Eser or Mr. Lexer, so it's easier to spot them. But yes, I think that we can give the word to Nuno, and then we can address the question after his last part, because maybe to some of them he will answer already now.
Right. Thank you, Elisa. So let's do like that. So we make best use of the time available, the next 17, 18 minutes. Right. So Nuno, I would say floor is yours. Thank you, dear expert colleagues. So yeah, just provide us, please, Nuno, with a bit more information on the project structure, on the eligibility, resources available here to support applicants, and what are the next services we will offer to applicants, and next steps maybe also. But the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Thomas. Well, in that case, I will try to be as brief as possible. Yes, considering the messages that were shared by the two speakers about projects, how small scale projects could address these examples presented here today. So, but in order to put your ideas on paper or through the gems, which I will later explain, I think it's important to understand a little bit more about the project structure. Next slide, please. And here, one of the, let's say, one of the, I wouldn't call it innovation, but one of the key features of the small-scale projects is the fact that the structure is rather slim. Why? Because you simply have to deliver your project through one work package, where first you define your project-specific objective. That will be achieved after the implementation of your activities and the delivery of your outputs. And so this is one of the key features, the fact that you just define one project-specific objective and one work package under which you will conduct your activities by target groups with the support of by the project partners with the support of the target groups. At the end of the day, you will have to deliver tangible results. This is still a requirement for small-scale projects, meaning that you have to deliver outputs. So this is the, as a response to one of the questions that we got initially, what kind of achievements can you deliver considering the time frame? Well, yes, indeed, the time frame is short, but you still have the possibility to deliver to the program tangible results through outputs, which can be a solution, a pilot, a network, a platform, a strategy. So there's plenty room for the delivery of outputs. As mentioned also in this early in this session, there will be no work packages for communication and management, exactly because we believe that these two components of your project are horizontal tasks, so they will be embedded in work package 1, but in the application form, you're still required to answer questions about the communication and management, of course. What kind of a communication tactics you will use, what is the, let's say, your approach to project management. So although there's no work package, you're still required to address these questions in the application form. Next slide, please. In another simplification that we introduce with the small-scale projects is the let's say the reimbursements, or how you can claim your costs. There's basically, considering the cost categories, there are two options that we ask you to consider. The option on the left side in green, it's you will apply a flat rate of external expertise and the equipment, and for the staff costs, and then for the other cost categories, you will apply, it depends, there's a percentage that depends on the staff costs. And then the option on the right, it's mostly a flat rate basis, and based on on the real costs of staff. So what we call a fixed percentage method, meaning that you would have to calculate, well, you don't have to calculate, but you would have to tell us the how this would represent during the implementation of your project, and then you apply a flat rate across all the other cost categories. Next slide, please. Right, and some questions that we got on Slido beforehand were more in the direction of when there will be a second call for small-scale projects. Well, the small-scale projects have follow a different approach when compared to classic projects, in the sense that we launch a call in 21 at the end of 21, and this call has basically two cutoff dates. The first cutoff date is already on the, well, there's still plenty of time, but it's on the 22nd of April, and then there's a second cutoff date in September 22. So those those who submit a proposal before the 22nd of April this year will then be subject, of course, to an assessment that's then the PC will decide around June, meaning that the project can start late June, early July. And then we repeated the same approach for the second cutoff date in September, meaning that there will be a PC decision in November, and shortly after, or meaning that shortly after, the project can start the implementation. Late November, early December. In both at both occasions, we will have a lead partners seminar where you will learn more about reporting, for instance, which is a topic that we are currently working on, and hopefully around April we will be in a position to publish more information about the reporting. As I also said initially, you will have to submit your proposal through GEMS. GEMS is the Joint Electronic Monitoring System. It replaces the EMS, what we have in place for the 14-20 period. Soon, around mid-March, the application form will be available through GEMS. Around the same time, we will publish a guidance on how to submit your proposal through this monitoring system. In the meantime, you're more than invited, more than welcome to get in touch with your ACP for project development support, including partner search. And we also invite you to watch watch the previous Q&A sessions, whose recordings are available under our website. The same applies to the documents mentioned by Thomas at the beginning of his intervention, meaning the IP, the integrated program, where you can learn more about our program priorities. The program manual, where you have guidance on the project, on project selection, for instance, among other topics of your interest. And finally, the terms of reference, which provides the legal framework for this call for small-scale projects. And right, so if you have questions, please do ask now, and I will be happy to answer them.
Yes, we do have actually many questions. I think that given the time, I won't be able to address them all. To some of them, I replied directly in Slido to the people who asked. Just one major comment. There are many questions regarding the co-financing of the project. And some of them were regarding Switzerland, some other Italy, some other Austria. In order to have these kind of details, it's better if you contact your national contact point who can provide you all the information regarding the national co-financing or additional possible option for co-financing. If we can maybe just take very few questions then in before closing. So I ask you, Nuno, to be rather quick maybe in replying. Is it possible to implement a small scale project and then apply to a classic one?
Yes, this is absolutely fine from the project point, from the program point of view. You can submit a proposal for a small scale project. Once in case this proposal is approved, then you can do a follow-up project through a classic project under in the next call, or even apply for another program. Of course, you're open to decide what is the best approach, but nothing prevents you from applying from a small scale and then going to a classic project.
Thank you, Nuno. One other question which was posed: what is meant by tangible results?
Well, tangible results are results that you can actually measure, in the sense that at the end of the project implementation, you will have to deliver from 1 to 3 outputs. These outputs have to be tangible, so have to be. We're talking about products that are the result of your activities. So it wouldn't make sense to implement a project where you conduct a number of activities and then at the end of the day there's no product that can let's say reflect the outcome of your activities. This is what we mean by tangible results.
Thank you, Nuno. And if we have the time, maybe we can still take 2 questions. One regards capitalization. Do you expect only replications of what has been already created, or also some aspects of innovation?
We are open to all type of capitalization options. It doesn't mean necessarily that we're looking for replication. I mean, as I said in my intervention, capitalizations. The purpose of capitalization actions is to roll out available tools and solutions. So it doesn't mean necessarily that we are looking for replication, but we can foster the implementation of these tools or solutions developed in other contexts.
Thank you,
So
Nuno.
innovation definitely is an aspect to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And by saying now that for all the questions we have, which we didn't manage to answer, and for which the answer is not already in our documents, we will publish an FAQ where we will address also these questions if relevant. So I will just take one last one. For newcomers, is it an option as well to go directly for a classic project, or is it recommended to go for a small scale first?
Well, it pretty much depends on several factors, but I would say that for newcomers, I would recommend the small scale project. Why? Because in terms of let's say in terms of the reporting is rather easier. Also, the way you will you also have the advantage to claim your costs through a flat rate, which implies less certification work. So it will be, let's say, rather easier for you, for a small organization, let's say, to report the costs and get reimbursed. But then it depends pretty much on the expertise that you have and you're willing to, let's say, share with the other project partners. But for a small organization who's not entirely familiar with European territorial cooperation programs, I would say that small-scale projects are an entry point to the program.
Thank you, Nuno. And then with this, I give back the word to Tomaden.
Thank you very much, Nuno. Thank you very much, Elisa. Yes, we are there. It's 3:30. Just to a few words at the end. I hope we could today flavor a bit more what small-scale projects could look like. Now I would say it's a bit up to you to see if small-scale projects could be relevant and make sense in your field of work, in your field of expertise. There is, as Nuno said, a number of resources and support that is available on the website. Please make use of it. There's also the contact points that are at your that you can ask for more information in your countries. We will be providing more services and more information in the coming weeks, so that people wanting to submit a small-scale project have everything in their hands to deliver a quality proposal. I'd like to thank our experts today, Mrs. Eser and Mr. Lexer, for your ideas. I think there will be a need to look again into what you have presented to us today, because there's many ideas in here that could be a starting point for possible projects. To our participants, thank you very much to your questions, to your active participation in our session. For your information, there will be the result, or basically the broadcast of today will be available on the website from tomorrow. We'll make it available there, and if there's some questions that still pop up, we will take them, and we may also complement our FAQ section on the website with some of the questions that you have posed today, so that it's there available for all. Right, so again, many thanks to all participants here today. All the best for the development of your small-scale project. Potentially, we are very, very curious and looking forward to reading your applications and your project ideas, because this is also a very new process to us here. So yeah, very much looking forward to receiving your project. Thank you so much, and don't hesitate to contact us in case of questions. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.